Okay. Good evening and welcome. So tonight's proud meeting, we're privileged to help the Ferguson Civilian Review Board with their presentation of their annual report on Ferguson policing, statistics, trends, and progress. PROUD stands for People Reaching Out for Unity and Diversity. The mission of PROUD is to sponsor opportunities that will encourage Ferguson residents to work together to build a community of harmony and equity within a diverse group of people. Courageous Conversations provide a neutral forum where we can listen to the diverse, goodwill voices of our community, work to improve understandings between all of us, and find ways to work together to help heal our community and help move together into a better future. Tonight, the Ferguson Civilian Review Board will be presenting their 2020 annual report. We will start with their introduction. After that, there will be 4 sections, and there will be a presentation that Jerry will provide, and that will be followed up by a couple question and answer time. We're anticipating that for the first section, which will be on the complaint process and the CRB's process, that we've allocated 30 minutes to that for the presentation and Q&A. Part 2 is going to be on use of force, and that we have 15 minutes. Third would be traffic stops. And then 4th is crime statistics. And each of those, again, we've allocated 15 minutes for the presentation, and then 1 or 2 questions that you may have. We will end with some final thoughts, and then Nicole Barton is going to give a short presentation on mediation and I think on these small group dialogues. And then we'll finish up whatever remaining time we have with additional question and answer. So the chat is open and visible for everyone. We're suggesting, because it's always hard to see if someone raises their hand, even if you use the raise hand icon, it's still hard for us to monitor. So if you have a question, again, you can put it in at any time because we'll be taking questions at the end of each of the sections. But we would suggest that you either type the question into chat or just put your name in, and then we can call on you. Cassandra Butler and Jackie Lewis Harris will be facilitating the Q&A portion. The presentations themselves will be provided by Jerry Knoll, and it's going to be a very interesting presentation. I've already looked at much of the report, and there's a whole lot of extremely interesting information there and things that I think will develop a good discussion for tonight. So without further to do, I'm going to pass this to Jerry Knoll with the Ferguson Civilian Review Board. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. And thanks to everyone for logging into this Zoom, and thanks to PROUD for hosting us. The logistics of the whole Zoom setup and monitoring chat and gathering the questions and answers, PROUD's taking care of all that. So us on the CRB, we don't have to worry about that. We've got quite a few CRB members on the Zoom call tonight. I'm Jerry Knoll. I'm one of the CRB members. We also have Eugene Franks. He's our chairperson. Tiffany Bush is on also. She's the vice chair. Patrick Chandler's on, William Bryant, Terry Burton, and Brenda Young. And one of our members, Ricky George, wasn't able to make it. So most of us are on here, and at different points, different ones may jump in to answer some of your questions. And we encourage questions that we'll try to answer. So with that, I'm going to try to share my screen here. And so is that visible?
Looks good.
Looks good. Okay.
I can see it.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to answer basic questions. What is the Ferguson Civilian Review Board? And basically it sprung out of a requirement from the consent decree that was signed between the city and the DOJ. And in 2017, the city passed an ordinance establishing it. So the board first started in 2017. We meet the first Monday of every month at 6:30. We are still meeting by Zoom. We for a while there we only met by Zoom. Then we went to like in person, but still in Zoom for the public. Eventually, we'll be back to regular meetings open to the public. We still need one more member. There's 9 members on the board. I introduced 8 of us. If you're interested in being a member, contact your council rep or the mayor and express your interest, and then you can apply for it. But we still lack 1 member. Our mission is to foster respect, and I'm going to read it just the way it's worded, to foster respect, trust, cooperation, transparency, and accountability between the FPD, the Ferguson Police Department, and the greater Ferguson community and community-centered law enforcement. So our main, among other things, we review citizen complaints and also analyze crime and racial profiling data to analyze patterns and trends. And civilian review boards throughout the country, they help their communities by giving them an insight into their local police operations. And they also help the local police departments by giving them an insight into how the public views their operations. So CRBs can be a built-in feedback mechanism to the police on community attitudes towards complaints, use of force, crime, transparency, and accountability. So we're going to go over our 2020 annual report. Now, we did a report in 2019, an annual report. So this is the 2021, and it's on the city website. And I'm going to just do a live demo. I'm going to click here. So here's the City of Ferguson website. If you go to the drop down for government and where you see Civilian Review Board, click on that, and it takes you to this page. And then if you go down, you'll see different reports we've done. But there's the 2020 annual report. And if you click on that, it'll bring it right up, and then you can scroll through it, table of contents. It's got everything there. So we're going to do an overview of it tonight, but if you want to really see the detail, you can go on the Ferguson City website. There's also printed copies available at the Ferguson Public Library because not everybody has internet access. And then our Facebook page, which you can find by searching for Ferguson Civilian Review Board. We post links to all the reports when we publish them. You can also find our meeting agendas and Zoom info, sometimes open meeting minutes, other CRB events like this one we would post, and then the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, their events and links to webinars, we put that on there also. So here's what's in the report and that we're going to cover tonight. The benefits of mediation within the complaint process, details about the review of complaints that we've done in 2019 and 2020, analysis of the use of force incidents for the last few years, crime statistics and trends for the last 35 years, and some of the things that are in the report, but we're not going to cover tonight, some of our accomplishments, and there's bios and pictures of all of the members if you're interested in that stuff. So keep in mind, when a question or comment comes to mind, go ahead and enter it into chat, and as time permits, we'll answer it at the end of each section. And we also want to try to get feedback about the report as we go over it, like how useful it is and how it might be used to improve policing in Ferguson, what would make it more useful, and what might be added to or deleted from the report. So we're interested in any of that sort of feedback. So we're going to start off with the first section is going to be on complaints. So this is an overview of the basic complaint review process. Complaints are submitted by a local person, a citizen. The Ferguson Police Department investigates the complaint. And it's worthwhile to note that the Civilian Review Board is not an investigative board. We don't do the investigations. The Ferguson Police Department investigates them. The Ferguson Police Department Internal Affairs Department. Then the next step when they complete it is we review the investigation and make our own determinations about it. And then after we finish that, we pass that along to the chief, and then a final disposition is made and notification to the complainant. So there's 5 possible dispositions, and I'll explain them later on. We note all the dates for these different milestones, and you can see we have a goal of the FPD finishing their investigation in 30 days. We take 60 days to review it, and the overall goal is 90 days. Later on, I'll tell you what the different dispositions are. And we use a preponderance of evidence standard when you're investigating and reviewing, which it's not reasonable doubt, which we do in criminal cases, but when we're reviewing the evidence, it's if 51% leans one way, then that's the way you go. So you just need a preponderance, most of the evidence going in one direction. And then our goal is to notify complainants at each of these milestones so they're informed about the progress of the complaint. Okay, we got your complaint. Okay, FPD finished the investigation. Okay, we finished our review. Okay, the final disposition has been made. Now, one of the things that we brought in, and really Nicole Barton as the consent decree coordinator brought it in as an alternative to misconduct investigations, to use mediation. So every complaint form has a checkbox so the complainant can indicate whether they would be willing to enter mediation or not. And if they enter mediation, the FPD won't investigate the complaint, but the citizen and the officer will sit down and discuss it with guidance by community mediation services. They speak directly to one another so they can hear what each other's thoughts on it. And it's very helpful. In fact, one complaint during 2020 was resolved through mediation. Some of the complaint investigations we reviewed as a board, we thought, this would have been a good candidate for mediation, but maybe the citizen making the complaint didn't know what mediation was, so they didn't check off the box. So it might have been a lack of knowledge. So we're hoping that the benefits of mediation will get more out in the community. And when a person has a complaint, they can file a complaint, but they can choose to go to mediation and talk directly with the officer in a structured dialogue. So here's some of the key takeaways over the last couple of years as we've been reviewing complaints. There were 8 complaints filed in 2019. They were filed by 6 different individuals against 7 different officers and 1 dispatcher. So there wasn't like one officer that was getting all the complaints. It was spread out. There were 6 individuals who made complaints because 2 individuals filed 2 complaints each. And then in 2020, there were 6 complaints, 6 different individuals, 5 officers and 1 dispatcher. Like I mentioned, 1 complaint in 2020 was settled by mediation. And then in 2019 and 2020, both years, there was 1 complaint that involved criminal allegations. So those are not investigated by FPD. They're handed off to another agency to do the criminal investigation. And then when that investigation is complete, FPD does an administrative investigation of the complaint, and then the CRB reviews that. Down at the bottom, you'll notice the average time from filing a complaint in 2019 to the final disposition of it was 592 days. If you remember the chart earlier, our goal is that the whole process would take 90 days. So that's not acceptable. That's way far from what we want. On average, the police department took 154 days to complete their investigation. We, the CRB, took 340 days to complete our review on average of each of those. And then another 98 days were tacked on to come to the final disposition. So the reasons for our long process on the CRB was that we were setting up a completely new process with between the CRB and FPD, and we had to develop that and grow into that. And then a lot of times we noticed information was missing from the complaint investigation, and we would ask for it, such as officer disciplinary records and training records. And so it was a back and forth till we had enough to make a decision. And then right in the middle of all that, COVID hit, and basically we had no meetings at all for 5 months in 2020. So the timing's going to be much better in 2020 when we finish up all the investigation reviews then. It's still not going to be close to the goal, but it'll be way, way better than it was in 2019. So here's some details. Hopefully you can read this okay. It's a listing of all the different complaints that we looked at in 2000. They were submitted in 2019. In some cases, we didn't even get a chance to look at them until 2020. But you could see we logged the date of the incident, when the incident happened that caused the complaint, when the complaint was received by the police department. In some cases, you could see on the first one, the same day the incident happened, it was recorded. This one here, 19002, happened at the end of 2018, looks like Christmas Day, and it wasn't filed for another week and a half, maybe because of the holidays. And then when the police department finished their investigation and it was handed off to us, is noted right here. And credit for pushing the complaint investigations through to completion should go a lot to Chief Armstrong, our new police chief. He took the position in June of 2019. And as you could see, like all these ones were, these ones were all received, pretty much all these ones here were received before he got here. And he pushed through to get them completed, these ones here, after he arrived. Also, Nicole Barton became the consent decree coordinator in September 2019 and helped to push those through. You can see the descriptions of the different complaints: discourtesy, excessive use of force, abuse of authority. Here's the one down here. There was a criminal allegation. And then we capture the demographics, age, gender, and race of the complainants. So you could see it varied like from 19 years old to 65 years old, a mix of males and females. The race of all the complainants was African American. It was all Black complainants. Here is the original disposition done by the Ferguson Police Department. And that was given to us, that when we reviewed it, we either agreed, and you could see in these first few, we agreed with unfounded, and on this one we disagreed. So some we agree with, some we disagree with, and then sometimes we make recommendations. It says discipline at the top here, but we probably should change that in the future, because that doesn't mean that discipline was given to the officer, but we made a recommendation there. And I did want to read the dispositions, because some of that terminology may not be clear to everybody, but there's 5 different possible dispositions, and they're all spelled out in the consent decree, and they're pretty well standard among policing in the US. Unfounded means where the investigation determines by a preponderance of the evidence that the alleged misconduct did not occur or did not involve the subject employee. Sustained means where the investigation determines by a preponderance of the evidence that the alleged misconduct did occur. Not sustained means where the investigation is unable to determine by a preponderance of the evidence whether the alleged misconduct occurred or not. Exonerated means where the investigation determines by a preponderance of the evidence that the alleged conduct did occur but did not violate the law or FPD policy. And then the last one is closed by mediation, which means the complainant and the officer agreed to settle the complaint by mediation, and the mediation was successful. So these first few where it says unfounded, that basically means the investigation determined that the misconduct did not occur or did not involve the subject employee, and we agreed with those. This one, the FPD disposition was unfounded, and we disagreed. We thought it was sustained, that the alleged misconduct did occur. Now, in our setup, the chief of police has the final say in the disposition. We passed that back to him, said we disagreed, and then he finalizes and make the final disposition, and the final disposition remained unfounded. Sustained, FPD thought, yes, the alleged misconduct did happen, and we agreed. Not sustained, we disagreed, but FPD, the chief stayed with the original FPD disposition. And then we agreed with these last two ones. So that's the 2019 complaint summary. So on this slide here, we'll talk about the 2020 complaints. And at the time of the writing of the report, which was in March, we had not completed our reviews of them, but you could see from the different ones here, there was some discourtesies. Here's a criminal allegation. 005 was the one that was completed by mediation. So we really don't know what the complaint was about because it was settled between the complainant and the officer. So we don't do any review. FPD doesn't do any investigation. And then another discourtesy one. And you can see over here, we agreed with this one that was sustained. This was closed. But since then, we've completed our review of two more or three more, I'm sorry, like 20002, which is unfounded. We agreed with that and passed that along to the chief. I'm sorry, two more. And then 20006, which it doesn't say, it was not sustained, and we agreed with that. So as the 2020 complaints get finished, when we finish reviewing them all, then we'll be able to publish a supplementary report with more details and analyze the average times it took us to complete those. So I hope I'm giving you all enough time to look at that and digest it in case you have any questions you want to ask. So we did want to give you an example of some of the recommendations. We give the general circumstances of the complaint. You know, our CRB members, we don't have prior police experience and aren't professional civilian oversight practitioners like many people involved in the National NACO organization are. And actually, to my way of thinking, that's a good thing because we as ordinary citizens, we have the same viewpoint as everybody, every ordinary person does on all these things. So we can give valuable feedback to FPD from a citizen's point of view. And these recommendations are examples of the feedback we've given. On one complaint, we noticed that the citizen was upset because they didn't feel like there was any follow-up on their complaint, and the officers had indicated that they were going to get back with them and didn't. So our recommendation was, well, be sure to leave contact cards so if the citizen has additional questions, and also let citizens know what the next steps are in the investigation. This was an investigation of a burglary, and the citizen felt like the FPD dropped the ball on it. Another example is we watch body-worn camera video, and sometimes the video they're interviewing people on the phone, but what we found is sometimes they forget to put the speaker on, so we only hear the officer's side. So recommendation was make sure to put it on speakerphone so we can hear both sides of the conversation. In another case, we felt like the officer, maybe their behavior, there was some implicit bias driving it. So we asked for that to be discussed with the officer, how that related to this particular complaint. In one case, we wanted to commend an officer. We saw on the body-worn camera that he really did a very professional job and displayed good community policing techniques in assisting a complainant. And so we just thought that was worthy of commendation for the officer. So we put that in our recommendations. And then lastly, you know, sometimes we agree with some of the reprimands. And in this case, we wanted to, our recommendation was we'll make sure the extra training that's given complies with the consent decree, and that a certificate of completion is placed in our folder, so we have so we know that that was completed. So this is going to be the last slide on the section on complaints. So if you do have questions, we'll pause after this slide to field some questions. And so now's your chance to get in any questions from any of the stuff that's gone by. On a recent NACO webinar on use of force, two civilian oversight organizations from New Orleans and Washington, D.C., they showed this type of analysis to put in perspective the volume of complaints they were seeing or the volume of use of force incidents they were seeing in the context with all the other activity that is going on for a police department. And so we kind of adapted that to our situation here. So three measures of police department, their interactions with the public. One is calls for service, and FPD does 20 or 30,000 calls for service every year. And you can find that data on the FPD website. Traffic stops, that data is available. FPD does anywhere from 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5,000 traffic stops in a year. Not lately, but in some years. And arrests. And the arrests are more in the neighborhood of 100, 200, 300 a year. So when you chart the number of complaints per 10,000 calls, or per 1,000 traffic stops, or per 100 arrests, you get this type of chart. And this lets you see that based on the volume of calls, 20 or 30,000 calls for service a year, less than 0.03% of calls might end up in a complaint, less than 0.4% of stops, and less than 3% of arrests. So with the volume that's going on, complaints are, they're bad when they happen, but it's still a relatively small fraction of the overall interaction of the police department with the general public. One question you might have about is, why is this thing 0 here? That's only 0 because the stop data is only available at June 1st of every year. So the Missouri Attorney General issues that report. We don't have that yet, so we don't know what to divide the number of complaints by. So eventually we'll have a bar there. And we only have 2 years of complaints, 2019 and 2020. Some additional things that are on the annual report that we haven't included. There's a chart showing the geographic locations of incidents to see if they're focused in one particular area or not, and an analysis of the gender and race of the complainants mapped against the gender and race of the officers that were involved in the complaint. So that's all in the annual report that you could look up when you want to. Anyway, that's the end of this section. So before we move on to the next section, we'll just pause for any questions.
Yeah, we have about 3 questions. And the very first one is, can a civilian file a complaint with the CRB online?
The answer is yes. Jerry, can you go ahead and go back to the website and go to our CRB section?
Okay.
All right, click on complaint form. And then scroll down to the bottom of the complaint form. So at the bottom of the complaint form, there's the email. So you can actually email the complaints either to the Ferguson Police Department or the CRB. So that's how you would actually do it if you wanted to submit a complaint online to the CRB.
Okay, thank you. The next question was basically I guess it was in reference to what Jerry was saying, where it says, in both cases where FCRB disagreed with the FPD chose to stick with their original disposition. Is there further discussion that can occur there, or does the chief simply have the final word?
So the answer is yes, but there was some additional discussion on those two cases. We actually, the CRB invited the police chief in to one of our closed sessions to discuss his reasoning for it. And what we decided as a board was that the actual recommendations and dispositions that we sent up to the chief were not specific enough. So we're working on being more intentional about what we're sending up to the chief, so it's clear to the police chief why we made the decision that we did. Okay.
Let's see, there's a couple of more questions. Is there a record kept of an officer receiving more than one complaint?
Jerry, why don't you go ahead and take this one, because I know you record all of this.
Yes, we do keep track of it. It's the same type of sheet I showed earlier. I'll just kind of back up. You know, we don't have fancy record keeping, but this spreadsheet is a lot longer. It's got more columns off to the side where we keep track of the officers, and so far we haven't noticed any pattern to it. But you're right, that would be a concern if we noticed, hey, the same officer is getting the complaints over and over again. So yes, we are tracking it.
Okay, and we have one more question. And has there been any recommendations made to the FPD regarding the traffic stop data or the data beyond just the complaints?
The shorter answer is right now we haven't. We have honestly had our hands full just getting through the complaint data, and we've also had to try to get through the use of force data, and I don't think we've actually even completed one. The issue we had with COVID and having to shut down for 5 months really put a pause on the things that we could do as a board.
Okay, and I do have one question that was accidentally sent just to me, which is, can there be transparency on what the recommended discipline actions are and what discipline action were taken? And I'll read that one more time.
We, no,
Okay.
I got it, Cassandra. So from I cannot answer for the police department, but I know from the CRB side, we actually, we read the recommendations that we have along with our decision on whether we agree or disagree with the police department. So we actually read it at our open meetings, and they're also available in our minutes as well.
Okay.
Okay, this is Eric Brooks. I did have a question posted on there. It's a question that asks, is the status of the complaints posted on the FCRB's website and or the Ferguson Police Department in real time? And if so, will the status of the complaints only appear in you all's quarterly, monthly, or annual report if it's not posted on the website?
So we normally, right now, we have just been posting them manually. And like I said, they're also available in the minutes as well. But we can look at trying to maybe post them monthly or as we finish a set of complaints. That's a good recommendation. We'll take that back and talk through that.
I asked that question. I asked that question because if there's something like a high level of burglary going on, or shootings, or a particular type of situation that's going on, you can also keep a real-time status of what we're dealing with in our community instead of like wait until a whole month or a whole week or whatever's going by. That's why I asked that question.
Okay, thank you. And actually, there is one more question. There's actually a request to look at that recommendation slide again. And
Okay,
along with looking at that recommendation slide
this
again.
one,
Yep. The question is, who made the decision that just because a complaint goes to mediation, the public can't know what the complaint was?
Mhm.
It's not just the public. Actually, do you want to take that one, Nicole? Because I think you're a little bit better versed in that than I am.
Hi, good evening. It's Nicole Barton. I'm the consent decree coordinator for the city of Ferguson. There's nothing barring us from giving a summary of what the complaint was about or what category it falls under, like this discourtesy, um, abuse of authority, or whatever category. But the details, of the complaint are just, it's once the complainant and the officer meet in good faith, we just get a detailed record back from Community Mediation Services saying that that both parties met in good faith, and then we close that complaint per mediation. But there's nothing in our federal or state statutes that bars us from, just giving a brief summary of what the complaint is about.
Thank you. I don't have any more questions. Becky, do you have any more? See any more?
I guess we should move on.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, the next
Thank you.
section is going to be use of force. And, Eugene kind of made reference to the fact that, part of our responsibility is to review a sample of use of force incidents that didn't result in a complaint. But since we've been struggling, just trying to keep up with complaints and with COVID slowing things down, we haven't actually got around to doing much in that area. So we really haven't dug into the review of use of force incidents. We have these raw numbers. We've requested and received from FPD the raw numbers about use of force. And what we should be doing, what we're eventually going to be doing, is taking a sample of some of those and say, well, let's see the details on that stuff and review it and come to some conclusions and recommendations on that. But at this point, this is basically from March of 2017 to December 2020, which is 3.5 years or so, or more than 3.5 years, 141 use of force incidents. So, and an incident could involve 3 or 4 uses of force within the incident. So these are incidents. If you notice at the very bottom, one of the notes is that multiple uses of force occurred during a protest event. So there's under the use of force incidents, we say there was one incident, one protest event, one incident, but that doesn't mean there was only one use of force during that incident. There could have been multiple ones. And you can see the different types and which ones are most likely to happen. And there's only going to be 2 slides in this section. This slide and then the next one. So if you have any questions, and then we'll pause again for questions if you have any specifically on use of force. And probably since we just left the complaint section, it'd still be fresh in people's minds. So if you still have another question about complaints, it'd probably be okay to ask that. So this slide here is similar to the one we looked at, and this is the last slide in the use of force section. Similar to the slide we looked at, the chart we looked at the end of complaints, which maps the volume of use of force incidents to the volume of calls, stops, and arrests. Again, to put it in context that there's, complaints, you never like to see them. Use of force are, most people don't like hearing that happening by our police department. But in the overall context, this shows how often that happens in relation to the volume of calls, stops, and arrests. So we have 3 years of, whereas with the complaints, we only had 2019 and 2020 complaints. Here we had data from 2018, 19, and 20. So we have 3 columns, and you can see these 3 are mapping it to the volume of per 10,000 calls. Again, there's 20 or 30,000 calls for service every year. And that type of a trend is what we'd like to see. Hey, the uses of force as a, the volume of use of force related to the volume of calls that FPD handles is going down. Again, similar to on complaints, for every 1,000 traffic stops, here's how many uses of force are done. This is 0 only because we don't have the 2020 data for traffic stops yet. We won't have that till June 1st. And then per 100 arrests. So we just have 2 charts on use of force. I'm sure in the future we'll get into use of force a little bit more and have some more information to share. But at this point, that's all the board has on this. So back to you, Cassandra or Jackie.
Okay. Go ahead, Cassandra. Go ahead, Cassandra.
Okay, thank you. So I see 2 questions. So the first question that came in was, what race of people were the use of force used on? Can you break it down by race and age?
We can probably get that data. We don't have it right now, but we can get it and then send it out.
So a second question is, do the categories of use of force align with the most recent use of force policy document coordinated between the Ferguson Police Department and the Department of Justice?
Yes. And right now, I know the policy is still going through a review right now. In fact, the board's going to finish their comments on the 21st, but yes, they do correspond.
Okay. And one more question is, do the police officers report the use of force, or is it reviewed on their body cameras, or is it reported by the person filing the complaint?
We have yet to receive a complaint that involved use of force. It's a report that's filed by the police department. Anytime that they meet the criteria of any one of the categories. And Nicole, I don't know if you want to go ahead and expand on that just a little bit.
Okay, I apologize. I'm eating too. Can you ask the question one more time, Cassandra?
Sure, it's in chat, but I can read it. It says, do the police officers report use of force, or is it reviewed on their body cameras, or is it reported by the persons filing the complaints?
Yes, every use of force is reported by the officers. The officers have to file a use of force form. We are in the process right now. We're working with a software company called Benchmark. We've been working with the DOJ team for the last about 8 months to really customize that form to meet consent decree requirements as well as policy requirements. That we are hoping will go live by June 1st, but our officers are required to fill out the use of force form. And then there's a supervisor review form that supervisors are required to fill out with a checklist. And part of that review is identifying all the body worn cameras and in-car camera footage, if those exist, as well as any other witness information that may be available for review as well. So all of that is true. So the officers report their use, the supervisors review the use of force. Body camera footages are always reviewed as part of use of force, and it can be reported by a person who wants to file a complaint as well.
And then just one thing to add, I know that right now the new policy is still out for review. If people want to go on the Ferguson website and actually pull it up, and then they can send comments to the monitor. But one of the things that's also involved with that is there's going to be a use of force board. So there's actually going to be a 3-person board that comes in and reviews all use of forces, and then the CRB will actually review what the use of force board has reviewed and recommended.
Okay, excited. I guess not so excited. Good. I'll just leave it good. I think there's one more question that came in. When reporting use of force breakdown by race and age, can you also include gender? So I guess that's a request.
Yeah.
I think we can. That shouldn't be a problem.
All right, thank you. Seeing no more questions.
Okay, so we're ready to move on. I just wanted to make one follow-up comment because body worn camera was mentioned in the use of force. And I didn't mention in the complaint investigations that we look at, to the credit of the FPD, every one of them had body worn camera video available to us to review during the investigation, and that's very helpful. So there was no incidents at all. You know how we often hear something happens somewhere and they say, oh, they forgot to turn on their video, or they, something happened where the video wasn't available, but the FPD officers seem to be very conscientious about making sure they have their body worn camera recording incidents. And so as a CRB, that's been really helpful to us. Okay, we'll move on to the next section, which is going to be traffic stop data and trends. And you might wonder, maybe not everybody's aware of the traffic stop data, but in the year 2000, because of allegations of bias in traffic enforcement, the state of Missouri passed a law that requires all police agencies to report traffic stop data yearly to the Missouri Attorney General. They have to report by March 1st. And then his office issues a statewide report on June 1st. That's why I said a few other times we won't see the 2020 data until June 1st when he issues his report. But you can go on the Missouri vehicle stop. If you Google Missouri vehicle stops report, it'll take you to the Attorney General's site, and you can find 20 years of these reports going back. So the data's been getting tracked for 20 years. And that's one of the key takeaways. Throughout that entire 20 years, there's always been a disparity between, a significant disparity between traffic stops between Black and white residents in Ferguson. It appears to be growing slightly in the last few years. And then something else we'll see in some of the charts here is that the total number of traffic stops dropped in Ferguson. It dropped dramatically beginning in 2015. And has remained much lower for the last 5 years. But the disparity didn't change. It stayed. In fact, if anything, it got worse. But earlier in the presentation, I mentioned, when we're talking about comparing the number of complaints or uses of force to other measures of activity by the police department, some of those bars were, per 1,000 traffic stops. And I mentioned some years FPD is 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. Well, maybe back in the early 2000s or mid 2000s, it was 5,000, 4,000 traffic stops a year. After 2014, it's 1,000 or 2,000 traffic stops. So that's how much it's dropped. And again, to put it in context, the disparity in Ferguson's traffic stop data is no different than it is statewide. For the entire state of Missouri, it's the same. Even nationwide, it's the same. That, the same disparity in traffic stops that you see in FPD data is true at the state levels and throughout the entire country. And it's pretty clear, but there really doesn't seem to be much going on to figure out what the causes are and correct it. Okay, I'll go on to the next one. So this chart shows the basic number of stops. So each one of these bars indicates the number of stops starting in the year 2001 all the way up to 2019. We don't have 2020 data yet. The red cross-hatched bar represents stops of Black residents or drivers. The blue bar, cross-hatch bar, represents stops of white drivers. So you could see the volume here. Here's some years where there was 5,000, almost 6,000 traffic stops in a year. That was 2011, 2012, 13, 14. Here's 2015. That's where it dropped off the edge, down to about 1,000. Here, maybe the last few years, it's gone back up to 2,000. Where you see the disparity is the difference in the bars. If there's no disparity, it should reflect the difference in the percentage of the population. So like take this bar right here where you had maybe 2,000 stops among Black drivers, and here I can't even read that. Maybe it's 100 or 200 or 300 stops among white drivers. Well, if you divide those out, that 2,000 divided by say 200 would be 10 to 1. Well, if the population was 10 to 1 Black residents versus white residents, you would say, hey, there's no disparity. You have a 10 to 1 population difference, you'd expect a 10 to 1 stop difference, but the population difference is not that big. So that's where you see the disparity. So with no disparity, the height of the bars should reflect the population percentages between Black and white drivers. Now, the next chart, and again, this is going to be only 3 charts. This is the last chart in this section. So if you do have questions about this, go ahead and submit it, and then we'll take a pause and look at some of those questions. A common reason given, and I've seen it posted on Facebook and different places, is that, well, the FPD data shows a disparity because the surrounding towns, the towns surrounding Ferguson, have a much higher Black population, and those drivers are driving through Ferguson, going to other places, and that's all true, okay? So people drive through Ferguson, so not every person on the road is a Ferguson resident, but the conclusion that is drawn sometimes from that is, well, therefore the percentage of Black drivers on Ferguson roads is much higher than the population percentage, therefore we should expect a higher percentage of Black drivers to be stopped. Well, over the years, that reasoning has been so common, even across the entire state of Missouri, that in 2018, the law was changed to require law enforcement agencies in Missouri to divide traffic stops into resident and non-resident, okay? And I don't know if you've been stopped I don't know if you were stopped back in 2016, but when they took your information down, they probably didn't ask you where you lived or what your zip code was or something like that. But now, if you got stopped, they would try to find out what your zip code or where you lived is, so they could say, okay, this was a stop for somebody who's a Ferguson resident. Oh, this was a stop for somebody who's not a Ferguson resident. So in 2018 and 19, the Missouri Attorney General data they published shows a resident disparity and a non-resident disparity. So where you can see that right here in this pie chart, this was the total 2019 stops. 2% of the stops were white Ferguson residents. 6% were white non-Ferguson residents. 38% were Black Ferguson residents. 53% were Black non-Ferguson residents. Well, where you would see the disparity, if you just look at the resident thing, 2% versus 38%. So that's just doing quick math, that's 19 to 1. Okay. So if Ferguson was 19 to 1 black residents versus white residents, you'd say, oh, okay, there's no disparity there. That's what you would expect. But that isn't the population mix in Ferguson. In fact, the census is going to give us a more accurate figure here within a few months. I think historically, a lot of times we say Ferguson is 2/3 black and 1/3 white. And, so we'll find out what the mix is soon, but it's not 19 to 1, and then among non-residents, 53 to 6, that's about a 9 to 1 ratio there. So that's where you see the type of disparity broken out by resident and non-resident. And that's the last slide for this section. So we're open for questions.
Those charts are really telling. Thank you. It's good to have a graphic to illustrate the statistics.
Yeah.
I think we only have a couple questions, and really one doesn't really relate directly to what you all do, but I'll read the question anyway. It says, is it illegal to drive with a temporary license after it has expired? Do you have a record of how many drivers have been stopped for this?
Do you want me to answer that one, Eugene?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Can you answer that one? Because I don't know the answer.
Yeah. In the annual report, we actually include the charts from the Attorney General's office, and the chart has a lot of different. It does have categories of stops. Was a stop for like a motor moving violation? Was it for like a vehicle equipment? And I can't remember if there's one for invalid license plate or something like that, but there might be there. So this is, and we haven't done any real analysis on that. This is just the trying to show the racial disparity in traffic stops, which is what part of our charge is to look at, racial profiling, crime stats, and complaint data, and see if there's any patterns or trends. So we're trying to identify, we're showing the trend that we see in traffic stops here from a racial disparity viewpoint, but we haven't really tried to analyze it in the terms of what's causing the stops. But if you look in the annual report, those charts are there, and we haven't really looked at it, but you might be able to reach some conclusions from that.
Okay, thank you. Also, there was a question about were Ferguson residents included in the surrounding population?
I mean, the answer would have to be yes. It's whoever's not a actual resident of Ferguson.
Yeah, it could be somebody from the state of New Jersey just driving through and they got stopped. It's, anybody, the non-residents is anybody that doesn't live in our town.
Okay, thank you. We have one other question. Is the same as expired registration, and it says it is the same as expired registration, and the driver can be cited. Oh, they're just replying to the tag question. That's okay.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and read it for the group in case everybody hasn't looked at it in chat. So basically, the expired license plate is the same as the expired temp tags. Is the same as expired registration, and the driver can be cited. However, with racial profiling, it's normally moving or not non-moving. So thanks, Assistant Chief, for providing that information.
Okay.
Okay, so this is Erica Brooks again. I have a question before that illegal temp tag question. And I had asked, what form of consequences have the Ferguson Police Department implemented to correct the bias policing, which has been resulted in racial equity for traffic stops?
I mean, I can speak a little bit about what I've seen. So we have had police and bias training on two set on or actually implicit bias training on two different situations. One where it was offered to all of the citizens of Ferguson as well as employees. And then there was a second, I'm sorry, some citizens and employees. And then the second one is where the police department actually went through a train the trainer course for bias and policing. So they actually have 5 police officers who were actually trained um, in bias and policing. So that's another thing. And then the last day, actually one of the CRB members and other members from the public were allowed to attend the training that day. So I know that the that the police department has attempted to do training in that way to try to combat the issue. And then obviously, you know, the everything that goes along with the consent decree as well.
Okay, so have you all did any statistics as to show that it's actually working? I mean, it's one thing to go through training. It's just like, you know, having a consistent bias policing, and people go through training and it's still happening. But is there some kind of statistics showing the training is working? No.
I'm sorry, it's Nicole here. I can answer that a little bit because we just completed the train the trainer model back in February. And so what we're doing now is we are going to be working with the community to tweak that training that we received from New York for that to become our own Ferguson's implicit bias or bias-free policing training. And then the entire staff will be trained on that. So I think that's a great idea, Erica. And at some point it would be great. And maybe we can even get some of our local universities on board to do some type of study to see if there's been any changes in that. But it hasn't been fully implemented yet, if that helps.
That does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and Erica, these statistics we're showing here are a once a year snapshot from the traffic data that's issued by the Missouri Attorney General. So when we see the 2020 data, we may see a drop in it, but I don't know. And then we won't see another snapshot till June of 2021 for this year's data. So, you know, if there is an improvement, it would take a while to show up in these stats, but you know, there might be other ways to measure it. I think that's what Nicole was, you know, referencing.
And that's why I had that question earlier about, do you all have some kind of real-time statistics that you all post about these different categories that y'all putting up, so we can see as a community that there's some change happening, the officers are going through training, and you all complaints are being answered to the point where there's something happening, and the community won't just go out protesting thinking that nothing's happening or nothing, you know, being implemented with the consent decree. That's why I was talking about the real time, you know, data being posted.
It's Nicole again. So, a couple of things with the real-time data. We actually have right now on the Ferguson Police Department's website, we have a interactive dashboard that has live data on it that gives real-time information on crime data, current crime data. One of the modules that we will be going into this year will be our early intervention systems, and we'll be working with the CRB on, you know, what information they are looking for and the community is looking for, so that we can provide real-time information on other statistical data, especially what is being reported out from the CRB now. And we also have our subject matter, our data analytic subject matter expert, Ben Horwitz, on the line. So if there's more specific questions, and I think somebody put in a chat to comment on the statistical assistance the city has access to. And Ben is our subject matter expert there, and he would be great to chime in if you'd like for him to jump in too.
Maybe Nicole, maybe we could, we've got a section saved for you guys at the end of this presentation, because we're still gonna, after this, we're gonna go into crime stats. And I think
Okay.
some of the stuff you and Ben are working on has to do with crime stats also.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get ahead of it.
Yeah, so we'll circle back and catch you guys on that stuff a little bit in the future. And yeah.
Thank you, Nicole.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we have no more questions at this point, so you could go ahead, Jerry, to the crime stats.
Okay, so the next section is going to be crime stats.
I had a question. I'm sorry. You didn't read it. So can I just go on and say it?
Blurt it out.
Sure, I'm sorry, I didn't see it, I missed it.
Yeah. So the chairman, I asked the question was the city of Florissant, was that included in this graph? And he said yes. And so the city of Florissant is 52.6% white. And that's definitely not reflected in that graph. So I'm curious about which surrounding, the surrounding populations. You said other cities that are surrounding Ferguson, and Florissant is definitely one that people come through Ferguson as well.
Now, Mildred, what I was saying is these are the people who came from the surrounding area that are included in here. Now, whether or not, I don't know how much Florissant actually contributes to that data, but it includes Florissant, Normandy, Jennings, and any of the areas that are surrounding us in North St. Louis County.
Yeah,
But
so
I think, go ahead, Jerry.
yeah, the data that's published by the Attorney General doesn't specify like where the people live. It's just like, are they a resident of the community or are they a non-resident? So it could be somebody driving through, somebody from South City, comes up to visit a friend, they're driving through, they get stopped, Somebody from St. Charles is coming over to go eat at the brew house, they get stopped. Okay. Could be, my relatives come down from New Jersey to visit, they get stopped. Okay, they're all non-residents. So yeah, there's a lot of Florissant people driving through because they're a big community right next to us, but there's people from all over the place driving through.
Totally. Okay, I understand now. So that's basically saying in 2019, of all the stops that were made, only 2% were white. Am I understanding that graph correctly?
2% white residents.
White residents.
6% were white non-residents. So 8%, you add them together, 8% were white. See, the one slice is white non-residents and white residents. Another slide is black residents and black non-residents.
Okay.
And if you look in the annual report for the annual report also has the pie chart for 2018 stops, and it's a little bit different, but it again shows kind of the same picture. But
thank you. I got it. It explains it very well. Thank you all.
okay, thanks, Mildred. Okay, so we'll go on to crime stats. And these crime stats that we're going to show a bunch of charts, they come from the FBI's Uniform Crime Reporting Program. And there's more than 18,000 law enforcement agencies all around the country that report this data yearly to the FBI, and FPD is one of them. So what we're going to look at is what's called by the FBI Part 1 crimes, which are serious crimes that are more likely to be reported to the police. Part 2 crimes, the charts we're going to look at are not Part 2 crimes, which are less serious crimes that may not be reported to the police, and they're not included in this FBI data. That would be stuff like vandalism and disorderly conduct. And if you want to see links to the FBI's definition of what Part 1 and Part 2 crimes are, the links are included in the annual report. But basically, the key takeaways that we see in these charts is that property crime has been decreasing. After rising through the 1990s and early 2000s, it's been decreasing for the last 10 years or so. Violent crime has been increasing. It's been consistent over the last 30 to 40 years, and it spiked in the last decade. And the last point that we'll see in these charts is that while violent crime has been increasing, the number of violent crimes cleared, and cleared is an FBI term, which we might call it arrested, but to them it's more than just arrested. It's at least one person arrested, charged, and turned over to the courts for prosecution. So it's more than just arresting somebody and then you let them, you turn them out. That's not clear. Cleared means the incident is cleared because you've actually identified the culprit, arrested them, charged them, and turned them over for prosecution. So even though violent crime has been increasing, the number of violent crimes cleared has been decreasing. And we'll see that in the charts. So here's the view of violent crime from 1985 to 2020. And we do have 2020 data in here, or maybe only 2019, or it says 2020. So I guess it runs through there, yeah. So basically, violent crime in the FBI definition is homicide, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault. Those four. They all involve force or the threat of force. When we were first doing these charts in our 2019 report, Dr. Richard Rosenfeld from UMSL kind of gave us some suggestions. We asked him about the best way to present the data, and he suggested to smooth the data by using a moving average. So what we do is it's smooth with a 3-year moving average. And then also he suggested plotting a trend line so you could see the basic trend. And that's what we've done here. So the red line are crime incidents. The green line are incidents that have been cleared. Again, one person, at least one person identified, charged, and turned over for prosecution. So you can see here, even though there's ups and downs, the overall trend on violent crime is up. And where I said, like after 2010, it's kind of spiked a little bit. And here in the last few years, it's maybe dropped off. So there's a little bit of a wave like this going on. The trend for cleared crimes is going down. And you can see where in 2010, it really started dropping off. Before it was kind of almost following the same pattern. It was almost following along with the rise and fall of violent crime. But around 2010 or the mid, maybe 2008 or so, as the violent incidents went up, the clearances went down. So that gap is kind of growing there. Property crime is a different story. Property crime by the FBI definition is arson, burglary, larceny theft, and motor vehicle theft. So there's a slight uptick, the number of incidents, it's slightly going up, but it's pretty flat mainly. And then over the last 10 years or so, it's definitely been going down. And similar to the violent crime, the amount cleared is going down. But the two of them seem more in sync, like the number of property crimes has been going down, and so is the amount cleared, but they kind of keep the same gap there. So this is a chart of clearance rates, and clearance rate is the percentage of crimes that are cleared. So if you had 100 crimes in a year and 50 were cleared, the culprit was arrested, charged, and turned over to prosecution, you'd have a 50% clearance rate. So the red lines are the violent crime clearance rates. And you can see the trend in the clearance rates for violent crime is down. The property crime clearance rates are going up, or well, they're flat basically. If you said they're up, it's only very slightly. It's pretty consistent. But one interesting point here is that up until about the year 2010, the violent crime clearance rates were higher you follow along, they kind of go up and down along with the property crime clearance rates, but they're always higher. But along about 2010, they plummeted. And now the clearance rates for violent crime are less than for property crime. This is the last slide for the crime stats section. So if you have questions related to this, go ahead and get them in, and we'll try to answer them after this slide. This slide is to try to put in perspective FPD's crime clearance rate. This shows the clearance rates for the county. So FPD's rate is this green line that jogs around, and then around 2010 starts going down. The county rate is this purple dashed line, and you can see that they're 30%. They're consistent around 30%, and they got a little bit better here starting in about 2010. This is the state of Missouri. Pretty much going along about 20%, and then got up to maybe 25%, and then maybe back down to 20%. And then this is the overall U.S. Crime clearance rates for class 1 crimes, property and violent crimes. And it's been pretty consistent, just chugging along right at about 20%. So to put it in perspective, FPD often has been higher than county, state, or national rates prior to 2010. Sometimes higher, sometimes drop down, but often higher. But starting in 2010, the crime clearance rates for FPD have fallen off to below the county level and about the same level as the Missouri and the U.S. overall levels. And that's crimes. That's our report on crime statistics and trends. All that data came from the FBI Uniform Crime Reporting facility. And if you go to the annual report, there's links to that FBI site, and you can go and find that data for yourself if you want to follow up at all. I guess we'll take questions now for this section.
Cassandra, are you
Yes,
seeing any questions on?
yes. I
Okay,
do
okay,
have a
go
couple
ahead.
of questions. So the first question is, are the patterns of crimes studied by wards? And along that line, the second question is, are the topics of crimes in the wards studied?
I don't believe anything's broken down by ward, is it, Jerry? I just want.
No, not at all. It's this is all at the FBI's database, national database, and it's not broken down any lower than just by cities, localities.
Okay. And I see one more question, which would you say crime has went up because of the pandemic? Is there?
We don't, so for the CRB, because we only get the annual report that goes out, we can't really answer that question. I guess I would have to pass that to Nicole. Have you seen a spike in terms of the numbers that you've seen reported, Nicole, that come in, I guess, monthly?
Yeah, I think we have Assistant Chief McCall is on the call too, and he's probably a better expert at answering that. But I think that we've all seen an uptick in crime and patterns of crime during the past year. But Assistant Chief McCall, are you still on the call? Is he still here? Did he drop off? I don't see his name. Anybody see him? He might have dropped off, but we did see an uptick in crime, especially certain crimes during the pandemic. So I would probably agree with that statement.
So Nicole, when you say certain crimes, do you know of anything specifically?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like property crimes went down and substantially, and probably because people were at home so much. But it seemed like crimes against people or more violent crimes went up. And so not really sure, why, but it seems like just even across our region, that's been a pattern that we've been noticing, especially like domestic assaults, and probably because people were at home, together so much during the pandemic. So we did notice an uptick in certain crimes and a decrease in others.
And Nicole, I guess I've got a question for you too. I think what the first question was about is it broke down by ward, and what we're showing here is at the FBI level, and it's not. But you might talk about that, whether the data on the dashboard that FPD has developed shows it by ward.
Yeah, so as far as FBI, it's not broke down, but we are working on that. And if Ben would like to chime in now, because we gave a breakdown of like the Ferguson map and what the wards were, and he was helping us to be able to identify the ward, specifically identify the wards. And so Ben, are you on? Are you able to talk about what we're doing in that area?
Sure. Hi, Nicole, and thank you, Jerry, and the
Hi, Ben.
Citizen Review Board for letting us on. I really appreciate it. We do, on the dashboards that Nicole spoke about, we had crime information up there that was using the UCR definition that Jerry just walked through here around Part 1 crimes and the way the FBI defines it. There's been a definitional change. Agencies are transitioning to the new method of crime reporting to the government, and the Ferguson Police Department's doing this as well. We're in the process of working with FPD to add the crime information back on the website with the new NIBRS definition. NIBRS is going to be the new acronym. People will have fun learning, and the data is going to change. There won't be nice and neat historical comparison of the data. So that's going to be a challenge for every jurisdiction in the country, trying to understand how to make sense of this data changes over time. I can go into more of the statistical challenges that will create for those interested. To the larger point about changing crime since the pandemic, what we've seen looking at the data nationally for many jurisdictions is crimes of opportunity or that require people engaging in public spaces or mobility have decreased significantly at the start of the pandemic. As the pandemic got on a little bit more, there were an increase in crimes against persons where interpersonal conflict. And then we just saw that continue to accelerate nationally in the second half of the year. And we, again, can talk more about it. Those are national trends, not Ferguson specific data. Did that help answer some of the questions?
No, that didn't answer the question about studying the crimes in the wards.
Yes, the wards. I apologize. So the ward data will be added, and it was on the original information. There is data on the call for service that Ferguson Police Department receives, and that has it by police sector, and they have a sector reference map available. Now, the sectors might not be the same as the political ward boundaries. That's the data that is used for deployment. So that's the how the information is stored. But that data is available, and if you look at the call for service information, you can get a decent idea of what calls are happening within each sector. So you could look at a specific sector and look at violent crime calls for service that end in a report. And generally speaking, calls that end in reports are generally substantiated crime calls. They may not be upon further investigation, but generally speaking, they are. And they may represent more than one crime that has occurred, but generally speaking, they represent one. Did that help a bit better? Oh, and there is a physical map as well, both a reference map and a map where you can see the events. Does that help?
Now, is it after the report is finalized and posted, or what is that? I mean,
so the goal of the dashboards is that there is they're supposed to be updated weekly. as they go through that transition. We're working to identify how to make sure that can continue to be the case. The information online hasn't been updated since late April, but generally the policy had been that it was updated weekly. And call for service data or the crime reports data would be uploaded the minute that information is saved within the database. And the goal with the use of force, misconduct, or citizen complaint, and stops data that we will eventually put online would be the same way. It will probably be uploaded weekly. It will represent once, in the case of a call for service, once the call is closed, then that information can get up there. In a crime report, once that report is approved, I believe. So use of force, it might occur after the initial officer. Those are things that we still have to discuss with FPD, but the goal is to make it as timely as possible without running the risk that the data may change a lot in the process.
So are you able to post it according to like the zones of the different wards, like zone 7, zone 19, zone 17, zone 33 and 32? Or are you able to post it like that? So when you look at a map, you can see this many crimes happen in this zone over here, not just, overall map that we're looking at it, and you really can't tell which zone it's in.
Sure. Unfortunately, the data that we have does not have those geographic attributes, so it's not clear which zone or which ward the event occurred in, and the data is not stored with sufficient geographic information to conduct that type of analysis regularly, the latitude and longitude, or with a geocoded address, as opposed to hand-entered address by the officer.
Now I'm not asking for any personal information to be like logged in on there. I'm saying, like, just say for instance, like, I got this pie going on here showing all the graphics and stuff, but something where you can have like bar graphs saying this many crimes happening in zone 33, this many crimes happen, like you said, reporting on a weekly basis, having that bar to where we can see, okay, maybe it increased in 33 or increased, and then have specific categories. Okay, you have more property crimes that's happening in 33, more burglaries that's happening, like things like that, like car burglaries or whatever, something like that, to where we can have an idea as a citizen what's going on. Whereas you all have personal papers to show and read that stuff, we can see that pie may be growing, the pie might be growing, or maybe the bars might be going up and down, something like that.
Absolutely. And the data that is available is by police sector. Unfortunately, the data is not available by ward or zone in that manner, but by police deployment sector is how it's stored by FPD at this time. But you can go to those dashboards. I believe Nicole just posted the link in the chat, and it has exactly that functionality where you can look at the calls for service for everything the Ferguson Police Department handled, or just what it handled in Sector 1. And just what it handled in Sector 1 for violent crime, and then change to Sector 2 and see how that information might be different.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I do not see any more questions. How about you, Jackie?
Okay. Yeah, we got one other final slide that we'll go to, and then Nicole's going to talk a little bit about mediation.
Okay.
Give an update on mediation.
So this
And-
is the final thoughts.
Yeah, final thoughts. Yeah,
Okay, fantastic.
We're right on time.
we are. Yeah. So this is just like some suggestions on how, as a community, we can measure success of the consent decree, success of the work of the different groups that are working to improve policing in Ferguson, the CRB, the NPSC, all the work that FPD is doing on policy, the training, the work that Nicole's doing as consent decree coordinator. And, you know, these are just suggestions on how you could measure that. So the goal of a lot of these things is to increase community trust in the Ferguson Police Department by greater transparency and accountability, and that should lead to a greater shared responsibility among all the residents in maintaining a safe community. So these are just some possible ideas of how you could measure that success. If like years from now we want to say like, well, was that consent decree effective? Did it really do a good job? How are we going to measure that? So, and these are just ideas. I don't know whether this is right or not, but I would think we should see a decreasing number of citizen complaints against FPD officers, a decreasing FPD use of force incidents versus the activity level, and those are a few of the things we've measured. And this last one, decreasing crime rates and increasing clearance rates. And there's a quote here that I thought is very significant, is that solving, and I'm going to read it, solving crimes requires a high degree of police community collaboration through reporting crimes and tips, witness participation in investigations, and the like. For this reason, clearance rates can serve as an indicator of not only police effectiveness, but also of police community collaboration. And if you notice, when we were talking about crime rates in the charts that we showed, the clearance rates for violent crime especially have really plummeted over the last 10 years. And I would think that as community trust is built up in the Ferguson Police Department, there's more community involvement in making our community safer, that the clearance rate would be an indicator of especially police community collaboration. The expectation is that the clearance rates would start to go up as the community collaborates more with the police in making it a safe community. So anyway, those are just final thoughts and ideas. We also do want to get feedback. I know there was a lot of questions, but if anybody has any feedback about how useful this information is, or how it could be used to improve policing in Ferguson, what would make the report more useful, and the information we're gathering here and publishing, and maybe what should be added or subtracted from the report to make it more useful. I'd encourage you to enter that into the chat, and we can also discuss that. And maybe while you're doing that, we can just move on to Nicole. And I think I got one last slide here that just Nicole was already given a little bit of an update on the FPD data, but Nicole, we'll just turn it over to you for any updates you want to do on this.
Hi, it's Nicole. So first, I just wanted to say thank you to the Ferguson Civilian Review Board. You all have done a phenomenal job of putting this annual report together. And this takes a lot of work. I know this takes a lot of work. I've had to do it before in my previous position as the director for the oversight agency in St. Louis City. I'm helping Assistant Chief McCall and Captain Dilworth put together the FPD's annual report now. And I just wanted to remind everyone that these are volunteer community members. So thank you so much to the Civilian Review Board for the time and effort that it took in putting this annual report together. You all have just done a very impressive job. And I wanted to just thank the members of PROUD, members of the MPSC that are on the call, all of the members of the community. I see people that were on the original task force. I remember attending some of those meetings early on. And I wanted to thank Ben Horwitz for being on the call and helping assist with answering questions, data questions, our DOJ team and our monitor teams, engagement specialists who are also on this call. So thank you everyone for volunteering your time to be part of this important work that we're doing in the city of Ferguson. And thank you to the Civilian Review Board for all your hard work. So our mediation program, actually, we work with the Community Mediation Services of St. Louis, and they satisfied 3 of our requirements of under the consent decree. One of those being what the Civilian Review Board directly is involved with is our police community mediation program. So when a person does file a complaint, we screen those complaints to ensure that they meet the criteria of the mediation program, and both the citizen and the officer have to agree to voluntarily participate in mediation. And once they participate in mediation, the complaint is actually closed. I don't think I said earlier, so there is no discipline imposed once both parties meet for mediation and they agree to, they meet in good faith, the complaint is closed at that time per the mediation agreement. The other portions of the consent decree that mediation services provide is we have neighbor-to-neighbor dispute resolution, and we have early intervention. We use mediation also in the court to divert people from the criminal justice system in cases that we can use mediation to resolve issues where we may have people that have disputes with each other. And so those are also screened to see if they qualify, and if they do, we can divert those people from having to pay fines or be involved in the criminal justice system. And finally, we use mediation services as our neutral facilitators for our series of small group dialogues. And while we have everyone on the phone, the first series of small group dialogues, they begin tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. And we got a really, really great response. Overwhelmingly, I wasn't expecting to have so many people sign up. And I even have people on the call that even volunteered. If we didn't have enough people that signed up, they volunteered to be part of the series of small group dialogues. And I really appreciate that. But we really have a great turnout. And so I can't wait till tomorrow to see how the first series of dialogues goes with the community and members of the FPD. And we're really wanting to use the feedback that we get from these dialogues to add to our community policing and engagement plan. So we've worked really hard. Lots of people on this call have been involved in that plan over the past year as well. Members of MPSC and CRB have really helped provide valuable input into that community policing and engagement plan. And so we're just going to use feedback from these dialogues to add to our community policing and engagement plan. So that's all the updates I really have. And if anybody else has any other questions, feel free to ask.
Yeah, so I think Cassandra and Jackie, I think we're ready for like any other questions that are out there that were left over or anything.
I'm just seeing compliments, and thank yous.
Well, those are nice too.
And excellence, and that's all I see right now. And everybody's,
There was a point about a suggestion for a data point.
yeah,
Let me
yeah.
pull that one up.
I see it.
Yeah. Okay.
Mark
wanna read it?
mentioned, I think including number of officers on staff as a data point in the charts could be helpful.
What was the suggestion?
Including the number of officers on staff as a data point in the charts could be helpful. So Mark, you wanna explain that a little bit more?
Sure. Yeah, just thinking in terms of percentage of cases that are closed, thinking about percentage of cases that lead to use of force, depending on how stressed the officers are, how many officers are on staff. I think it would be interesting to see that number, compared to the others.
Yeah, okay, I think I understand the point, like where we see the clearance rate going down, maybe a part of partly because they're understaffed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what, another question is, what % of all the complaints received are reviewed by the CRB? So I guess, yes. I'll let-
Brenda, do you want to take that one?
Yes, I'm not sure of the actual number, the actual percentage number, but anything that is not a criminal investigation, we would receive, and we would get the complaint number. We get a copy of the complaint. We review the all of the data for that, including the body worn camera and the dashboard camera, the officer's report, the investigator's report, and the police chief's review and recommendation. So we get that for every complaint, and every complaint receives a number when it comes in from whatever source, whether it comes through the CRB or direct through the police department or online, any one of those ways that people would lodge a complaint. We would have a notice of that complaint being lodged, and then we have the update in terms of where it is with the police department. We get it when they've reviewed it. And as has been said earlier, I think we're coming closer to being able to meet the projected timelines for completing the investigations and being able to send the information on to the Civilian Review Board. There have been a number of delays and just procedures that really had to get in place. And has been said earlier, having a Civilian Review Board coordinator and new personnel and so forth, all of that has helped us get closer to what our projections were, what our desire was to be able to give a quick turnaround and a thorough review. So generally, if it does not involve a criminal complaint, which is investigated internally and would not come to us because there obviously are some legal issues there that have to be handled, any other complaints would come to the board.
And I think it's at her question. And when I think, well, when I look at 6 complaints in one year and 7 in another, you know, it feels like that those are low number. And so and then when you look at the specifics of the complaint, you know, you wonder if there are complaints that are not being recorded as a complaint. And I remember that last year, maybe a year or two ago, there was someone who said they made a complaint, but it didn't seem like it was going through the system. And we had to backtrack with the former chief about what happened to this complaint. Is that right, Mildred?
I'm sorry, you can't see me, yes.
Yeah, we were aware of a complaint or two that wasn't accounted, that we knew about, that wasn't accounted for in the system. And so I think that that's an important question to ask. If we're getting these 6 or 7 complaints, are they all the complaints? Or is there another category of complaints we don't know about that get handled before they become formal or something like that?
There should not be any that we don't become aware of. Even if it's a criminal complaint, we should be aware of it, though we don't investigate it, or you know, we don't follow up the investigation on it. So there should not be.
That should be 100% number.
It should be. Hopefully, that is what's now happening. I agree with you that I think previously that did not always happen, or it might have been reported differently. I think there are more safeguards in place now. I think there are more procedures in place. Also, the DOJ has approved more of those procedures, I think. And so with new personnel, new eyes on it, I'm expecting that that should give greater accountability and make sure that nothing is falling through the cracks.
Okay.
If I'll just add one more thing to that is even when we get emails, we convert those and attach a complaint form to that, and those get sent to the CRB as well. So since I've been here, anything that's come in by telephone, by email, by a form has been turned over. I am aware previously there were some issues of how maybe some complaints were handled before. But I don't believe that there's any complaints that have came in that have not been turned over to the review board, not since me or the new chief have been here.
Thank you. I do remember in 2014 when the press was asking if there had been other complaints, and the police department was like, I don't even think they had a file. Like, what complaints? The file must have been the trash can. So we have definitely made improvement since 2014.
Yeah, and one thing I will also mention is we're working with the police department now to do a review of past complaints so that we can gather statistics. And we haven't gotten the full number yet, but there were a few complaints in the past that were not provided to the board, but we have been told that every complaint that has come in from a citizen that they have in the files, we will be getting those and we will be able to review those. A couple of things I wanted to say before we cut off. I wanted to say thank you to Proud for hosting this for the CRB. It really took a lot off of our hands, not having to worry about doing the moderating and also making sure everybody got admitted and the questions and everything. Also, Councilwoman Burrow, who is our liaison from the council, unfortunately was not able to attend today because she was in a budget meeting with the city council. And I think that's also the reason why we didn't get a lot of support from the council. Wanted to thank Assistant Chief McCall for being on the call and representing the police department, and also Mr. Charles Hart from the DOJ for attending. And I know we also had a representative from the monitor's office who had to leave earlier, Courtney Caruso. So just want to say thank you for everybody for coming out and supporting this. I put it in the chat, but if you have any additional questions or comments, please send them to the CRB at fergusoncity.com. We are going to take a couple of things back with us. One is making sure we post the complaints results more often. We will get the disposition for the complaint that was mediated. We'll make sure that that gets out, and then we'll also make sure that the race, age, and gender for the use of force reports, we do have that data. We will make sure that we also get that posted somewhere so that everybody can see that data. Okay. And that, I think that's all we have from the CRB. Alan, if you want to, if you have any closing remarks or anything from Proud.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Eugene. I just want to mirror what you've already said. We want to thank the DOJ and the monitoring team for participating, everyone from the FPD and support and city staff. And then I'm really just impressed and amazed by the quality of the presentation, the information, and the clarity that you provided. The graphs just communicated so well, so quickly, so much good information. I think it's very usable and really shows us well any of the progress we are making or not making in several cases. So I was just impressed by just how much data you've collected and how you were able to sort through it all and present it in a great way. So thank you so very, very much. Hope we have another opportunity to work with you for the next time you have a presentation like this. Next thing, our Proud's next presentation, or next event, I should say, are going to be our annual planning meeting, which is going to take place on Saturday, June 26th at 2 o'clock. At the moment, we're trying to find a location to do it live in person. We'll probably also have a Zoom component. But if you are interested in helping us set our goals and events for the next fiscal year, we're on the July to June fiscal year, I hope you would be able to attend and help us with making sure that our events for the next year are going to match which will best suit your preferences. And you can get more information about that. And also we will be posting the video of tonight's event. So you can get access to them through our website, www.proud-ferguson.org, or through our Facebook page. And the videos then will be also posted on YouTube. We've set an account there too for all the videos that we've had for the events over the past couple months. So if you are not on our mailing list, please be sure to give us your email address before we sign off here. And just again, want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. I hope you found this to be as enlightening and informative as I have. And just thank you all so much. It was a great event.
Okay.
And wish you all good night.
Everybody have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good
everybody.
evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the great questions.